So in this class this semester, I'm making three big predictions, right? First is that Trump will win in November. Second is that the United States will go to war against Iran. And the third big prediction is that the United States will lose this war, which will forever change the global order. So last class, we looked at one reason why the United States would invade Iran, which is the Israel lobby. And in today's class, we'll look at another reason, which is the defense of empire. America is an empire, and it must defend its imperial status. So let's examine what an empire means for America. So from 1950 to 1980, America's economy was mainly focused on manufacturing, factories, okay? So manufacturing as a share of GDP was 40%. It made 40% of profits, okay? And it employed 30% of the workforce. So during World War II, America had a lot of factories to produce weapons. And after World War II, these factories produced consumer goods, cars, electronics, to sell to the world. And this made the American workers the wealthiest and most well-educated middle class ever in human history. If you were a factory worker from 1950 to 1980, you had a really good life. You worked 40 hours a week. You had health insurance. You could buy your own house. Your wife didn't have to work. You could have 3 to 4 kids. You could have 2 cars. Every year, you could go on vacation to some place nice. You could eat out once a week. And then you retired and had a very good pension. So it was really the best life. And so workers from 1950 to 1980 in America were really the luckiest people on the planet. You were better off actually being born into the middle class in America than you were being born rich in Africa or Asia or South America, okay? But then after 1980, was something called the Reagan Revolution and the introduction of what we call neoliberalism. And remember that we studied neoliberalism before. Neoliberalism is an economic philosophy that believes in the primacy of free markets and deregulation. So after that, we now live in today what we call a financial economy. Okay? The economy has been financialized. And so what does that mean? It means that right now, financial services okay, account for 22% of all GDP in America. Manufacturing has gone down to 10%. So it went down from a high of 40% to now a low of 10%. Financial services is now twice as much as manufacturing. Financial services bring in 40% of all profits. And financial services employs 5% of the total American workforce. Okay? Now, let me explain what these numbers mean. What you're seeing behind these numbers is a radical shift, overhaul, transition in American society. Okay? Let's just look at politics. Politics, governance. From this period, 1950, 1980, American workers had a lot of political power, right? Because they were middle class, they were confident, they participated in politics for unions, okay? Today, most of this power has shifted to the financial services, which basically means Wall Street. And working for Wall Street are what we called the professional managerial elite. Okay, so these are people who live on the coast, San Francisco, New York, Washington, D.C., Boston. They went to elite schools, okay, the Ivy League, and they're multicultural. And right now, they're the most powerful political group in America. And this has led to massive political divisions within the country, okay? So it's the first major consequence. Before, it was workers who had a large say over American politics. And now it is Wall Street, the financial sector, and the coastal professional management elite. And so government shapes policies that favors this multicultural elite, financial elite, at the expense of workers, okay? So that's the first major shift. But then you look at education. And so what I mean by that is that, if you went to a good school, a good university in the 1950s and 1960s, your ambition was to become a professor, right? Or maybe a scientist, or maybe an entrepreneur, or a corporate executive, okay? Nowadays, most people who graduate from these top schools all want to go where? Wall Street, and that's it, okay? Why? Because you make more money on Wall Street than anywhere else. Okay? So you're talking about these PhDs in statistics and artificial intelligence who should be working for IBM, developing the latest technology, right? Instead, they're on Wall Street working for a hedge fund, gambling with other people's money. Okay, so basically the economy has gone from one that is productive or creative to one that is entirely speculative. Okay? So remember that the financial services, all it does is take people's money and gamble with it or invest in it to make more money. Okay? It's not actually productive. All it is speculative. Okay? And the smartest people in America, the most well-educated, are all focused on this sector. Okay? And then you look at the economy. And what has clearly changed is that the economy in America has become much more unstable. So in 2001, there was the internet crash, right? The dot-com crash. In 2008, there was the financial crisis, right? The subprime crash. And then after that, you have these banks going bankrupt, okay? I think like this past week, 3 banks went bankrupt in America. This should not be happening. And the reason why this is happening are all these bubbles, okay? So in other words, all assets right now in America are overpriced, okay? Housing, stock market, and people are gambling that these asset prices will only go higher, which creates bubbles. And when these bubbles burst, you have volatility and instability and uncertainty, okay? So this is bad for the economy. And then you have things like inequality, right? So if you look at profits, if you look at wealth generation, the top 1% make much more money than everyone else. And this inequality is only increasing. Okay? So in other words, the financialization of the American economy has been really bad for America. And you can make the argument that it's actually destroying the fabric of American society. Okay? It's making politics much more divisive. It's making the economy much more volatile. The smartest people are engaged in speculative activities. Young people don't want to work. They just want to buy Bitcoin. And you can also make the argument that you're creating a rentier economy. Okay? And the rentier economy just means that if you are young, you can never afford to buy a house. You can only rent, which means that you yourself can never go from, you have no more social mobility, okay? So this overall is really bad for America. Now the question then